As night still shrouded the streets, streetlights pierced through the leaves, casting faint streaks of light onto the ground. The director quietly hurried toward the familiar little house. He had no idea that inside that house, Yuen was waiting for him minute by minute, for the trip to the market that the two of them had promised each other yesterday. Perhaps because she was so excited, Yuen couldn't sleep last night. Under the dim light of the oil lamp, she meticulously checked her basket over and over again, afraid of missing something. Since childhood, she had never traveled far, nor had she ever stepped outside the familiar market where she used to help her mother sell fruit. Thinking about going to a bigger, livelier market this morning, experiencing something new with the director, Yuen felt unusually excited and happy. "I wonder when he'll arrive," she whispered to herself, feeling like time was passing slowly every time she looked out the door. Then, exhausted from waiting, from staying up all night, Yuen unconsciously leaned against the wall and fell asleep right next to the basket of prepared goods. Until the clatter of the gate sounded outside, Yuen startled awake. The director had arrived. In the dim darkness, he stepped into the yard, gently knocked on the door, and called her name in a voice that was both familiar and warm. The door opened, the faint light of the oil lamp becoming the only source of light shining on both their faces. His smile, then Yuen's smile in response, gentle and relieved. That moment made Yuen feel embarrassed. She remembered staying up all night and falling asleep without realizing it, making him wait and worry about her. But he just smiled, gently dispelling her embarrassment. "I'm used to waking up early. It's okay." Those words warmed Yuen's heart. The two chatted as they packed up the basket. The director carefully carried the basket Yuen had prepared, while she adjusted the slightly open door. As they stepped outside, the gate of the small house closed behind them, leaving behind a strange sense of peace in the darkness. Only the faint light of dawn remained ahead. The two figures walked side by side on the familiar road leading to the village entrance. There, the private driver's car was waiting. When the trunk lid opened, the director personally placed the basket inside neatly, then turned back to help Yuen into the car. The car door closed, and a new journey began, gentle, warm, and full of hope. Before Yuen lay a beautiful road stretching straight ahead. On either side of the road, high-rise buildings stood side by side, rising up into the clear blue sky. The car rolled along, moving further and further away from the familiar, peaceful place she knew every day. The scene before her eyes gradually became more crowded, with houses built close together and a constant stream of cars driving non-stop, creating a lively and vibrant rhythm of life. Sitting next to the director, Yuen couldn't hide her excitement. This was her first time traveling so far. Yuen's eyes kept looking out the window, both excited and curious. She sensed that this trip was very special, so she turned to ask the director some very innocent questions. Sometimes just minor queries about the road or where they were going. But he only responded with a gentle smile, saying little. A moment later, he gently asked about Yuen's mother. The question made Yuen's face fall, a hint of sadness appearing on her face. Noticing this, he skillfully distracted Yuen with his knowledge of geography. He talked about the bridge they were about to cross, the winding river below, and the untold stories associated with this land. His calm voice gradually soothed Yuen's heart. He promised to give Yuen a truly memorable trip to the market. When the car stopped, Yuen saw a deserted riverbank. The shore was quiet, but the river was completely the opposite. Boats and ships jostled each other on the water, creating a bustling and lively scene. This was the floating market, a market deeply ingrained in the consciousness of the local people, while also making a strong impression on domestic and foreign tourists with its hustle and bustle and unique features found only in this river region. And that was also the surprise that the director wanted to give Yuen. Without keeping Yuen waiting long, he took her along the riverbank to where small boats were moored close to wooden posts, rocking gently on the water. He approached a middle-aged man, a longtime boatman at the floating market, to hire a boat, hoping to take them to the center of the floating market. Then, the two stepped onto the boat, blending into the stream of boats and people on the river. Under the blazing sun, the heat was scorching, but everyone's faces were radiant. Laughter echoed across the river, creating a lively and warm scene. Everything blended together like a perfect puzzle piece, painting a vivid picture of life on the river here. Perhaps because she was familiar with the river and seafood products, Wion's pomelos stood out at the floating market. Their lush green color and delicate fragrance caught the attention of many. The first customer is a young boy on a small boat nearby. He pulls up close, smiles brightly, and selects a few fruits. The first pomelos sold at this special market make Wion visibly happy, her eyes sparkling with simple joy. The director sitting next to her is also delighted, his smile betraying his satisfaction. The boat carrying Wion continued to blend in with the other boats. Not only traders, but also many tourists came to experience the floating market and buy Wion's pomelos as souvenirs. Each time a pomelo was handed over, the basket in front of Wion became a little lighter. Seeing the basket gradually emptying, both of them couldn't hide their excitement. They moved to another corner of the market. When the boat pulled up to the edge of a stall, Wion skillfully sold pomelos to a middle-aged woman. At the same time, the director stood by, holding a pomelo in his hand, gently introducing it to foreign tourists. What surprised everyone was that he could communicate fluently in foreign languages. The cheerful customers bought the fruit, unable to hide their surprise at seeing people from this river region speak their language so proficiently. Wion's pomelos gradually attracted the attention of the traders. Because they rarely appeared in the stalls here, her basket of pomelos emptied before she knew it. The stream of people and boats continued to flow busily, carrying laughter and conversation that blended into the waves. When the sun was high overhead, Wion and the director boarded a boat to return to the pier. On the river, cargo boats still floated gently, and large and small boats passed by busily, creating a lively scene characteristic of the river region. Back at the pier, only a few pomelos remained in the basket. Wion skillfully introduced them to the tourists in a simple, charming voice. It was this sincerity that made everyone happy to accept her offer, and in just a moment, the last pomelos and a few kumquats were sold out. In that moment, Wion transformed into a natural and approachable tour guide. After the whole morning, both were exhausted. The director treated himself and Wion to a glass of refreshing coconut water each. They sat at the corner of the boat, quietly watching the river flow by, seeing the floating market gradually slow down in the midday sun, feeling strangely lighthearted and peaceful. Then, the director's phone suddenly rang, interrupting the rare moment of peace. It was a call from a subordinate speaking urgently, urging him to come in early to sign an important work contract. After listening, he nodded slightly, then turned to Ewan with an apologetic look. So, the two had to leave the pier and board a small boat to return. Behind them, the floating market was still bustling and lively, even though it was almost noon. Boats were still lined up on the river, the sound of engines mingling with the echoing cries of vendors, creating a rhythm of life that never slowed down. Leaving the floating market, the two got into the car, as the director suggested. To ease their growing hunger, they decided to look for a roadside restaurant. On the way, he didn't forget to stop the car to buy a few local specialties, carefully wrapping them as if carrying the flavors of the river region with him. The car continued rolling along the familiar road. Suddenly, Wion felt an indescribable emotion welling up inside her. She thought about how he had quietly helped her, not just today, but throughout the past period. That silent concern made Uyin's nose sting, and her eyes well up with tears. Noticing her emotion, he skillfully soothed her, not wanting her to feel guilty or heavy-hearted. He softly said that the main reason for today's trip to the floating market was to sign a contract, and everything else was just incidental. His simple words were like a reassurance, allowing Uyin to gradually calm down. The car continued steadily forward, carrying the lingering echoes of a sunny morning filled with people and emotions too raw to name. Their conversations were as simple as heartfelt confessions. For the director, this trip was a special one, reserved solely for Uyen. He always listened attentively, never interrupting, allowing Uyen to express her feelings fully. If fate had not arranged that chance encounter, perhaps Uyen's life would have drifted aimlessly among the foggy crossroads. And right now, Uyen silently thanked life for bringing her to him, the man who opened up a path for her, a path called peace. With their unfinished conversation, seemingly oblivious to the passing of time, the car slowly stopped in front of a restaurant at a roadside rest stop, just as he had instructed earlier. The two figures stepped out of the car, no longer in a hurry like they had been that morning. Everything was slower and gentler now. They entered the restaurant with its spacious and airy atmosphere. They sat on the same side, The director carefully held the menu and handed it to Uyen so she could comfortably choose what she liked. He said that whenever he passed by here on business trips, he often stopped to eat and found it very delicious. So he wanted to share that experience with Uyen. Uyen nodded slightly, a warm feeling she couldn't quite name rising in her heart. Just then, the director's phone rang again. It was a call from a subordinate. The call had barely ended when, outside the restaurant, a man carrying a stack of documents appeared, his eyes still dazed as he saw the director's familiar car parked on the street. Recognizing it as the director's car, he hurried inside. Before his subordinate could sit down, the director stood up, picked up a pen, and quickly signed the documents to complete the task. Every movement was decisive and neat. His subordinate couldn't hide his joy because, in his eyes, the director was not only young and talented, but also very energetic and decisive in his work. As for Uyen, sitting quietly and observing, she suddenly realized that the director had two parallel worlds, one serious and capable at work, and one gentle and warm reserved just for her. After finishing the work, the director quickly shed his usual stern demeanor. He turned to his subordinate with a relaxed smile, treating him more like a friend than an employee. Glancing at the clock, which showed it was almost lunchtime, the director proactively invited his subordinate to stay for a meal, understanding that the other party had likely rushed over just for the work. The subordinate laughed, taking it as a soft command from his boss, and happily nodded in agreement. As he walked towards the table, he suddenly stopped. It was rare to see the director go anywhere with someone else, and even rarer for that person to be a girl. His eyes flashed with surprise, then quickly turned polite. After a few polite greetings, it was Uyen's turn to be surprised when she heard her subordinate call her name accurately. Seeing the surprise on her face, Uyen realized that the director had told him her story. Her subordinate looked at Uyen with a kind gaze, sincerely complimenting her on her determination and strength, then couldn't help but blurt out that the two of them looked very good together. That remark made Uyen blush with embarrassment. The director also seemed flustered, losing his usual composure. He smiled awkwardly and stammered an explanation that they were just friends. Although it was a simple statement, that moment made the atmosphere at the table feel strange, light yet awkward, like an emotion that had just been kindled but was quickly hidden away. The meal passed quickly. After finishing, the three parted ways. The subordinate hurried off to prepare for the work he had been assigned, while Uyen and the director got into the car and continued their journey back to the small house. But this time, the director had another surprise for Uyen. As the late afternoon sun began to turn a pale yellow, the director drove Uyen across the large road on the outskirts of the city. Suddenly, he smiled and asked her in a playful tone, "Do you know who the contractor is for that building?" Uyen looked up at the massive structure before her and shook her head. When she heard that it was a project undertaken by his company, a luxury resort hotel exclusively for partners of large corporations in the city, Uyen couldn't hide her surprise. She let out a soft, "Oh," her eyes shining with admiration. To Uyen, the director's world suddenly seemed larger and more distant than she had ever imagined. Leaving behind the hustle and bustle of the city streets, he simply said he wanted to take Uyen to a place he really liked. Unlike the crowded, bustling floating market in the morning, he took Uyen to a quiet riverside. The afternoon breeze gently blew, bringing a cool sensation. The director said this was where he often came when work pressure overwhelmed him. He enjoyed the feeling of the evening breeze sweeping past, as if carrying away all the worries accumulated in his heart. Before Uyen's eyes appeared the Mai Thuan Bridge, a cable-stayed bridge stretching powerfully across the vast river. The breeze from the water blew up cool and refreshing, bringing with it an unusual feeling of comfort. Uyen took a deep breath. Her eyes lit up when she saw clusters of pale purple water hyacinths floating lazily along the current. She smiled, saying she really liked that flower. The director replied softly that he remembered, even though Uyen had only mentioned it once. The words were as light as a breeze, but they made Uyen's heart flutter. In that peaceful space, Uyen slowly recounted her simple dream: to live near the floating market, to go out to the river every morning to sell fruit, to listen to the sound of water lapping against the boat, and to watch people passing by for fun. He listened quietly, then gently promised that if she liked it, he would take her to many more places in the future. But the joy faded when Uyen mentioned her mother. Her voice dropped, carrying both longing and fear of returning to the house with her stepfather. Noticing the sadness in Uyen's eyes, the director skillfully changed the subject, not wanting to let the beautiful afternoon be clouded. Uyen stood quietly beside him, letting the wind touch her hair, letting her heart slow down. In that moment, she understood that the director didn't just want to take her out, but also wanted to show her that after the stormy days, life still had many beautiful things waiting ahead. One just needed the courage to move forward. Perhaps because she was too tired after a long day, Uyen gradually fell silent and unconsciously fell asleep on his shoulder. When she woke up, Uyen apologized awkwardly, but he just smiled gently and reassured her that it was okay. She should sleep to rest. The sky was already darkening, and Uyen and the director started heading home. When the car stopped in front of the house, Uyen stepped out, her face still showing signs of fatigue, but her smile was genuine. She softly said that although today was tiring, it was also a very happy day. It wasn't an extraordinary day, but it was warm enough for both of them to carry in their hearts, like a gentle, peaceful, and unforgettable memory.